I'm Anthony DiLorenzo alongside Sarah Azari, criminal trial attorney, and now we are on day 10 of the Diddy trial. And today was a really big day. Capricorn Clark, who used to work for Diddy for many years, off and on, a tumultuous relationship, took the stand, and she really tried to hammer home for the prosecution racketeering, conspiracy. How did she do?
Well, not really conspiracy. We have a lot of one-off events, serious events. I mean, she testified. You were in the court. You know, she testified to Diddy showing up with a gun at her home and essentially kidnapping her and forcing her against her will to go over to Cudi's home. That's kidnapping. She testified to, obstruction of justice. Cudi essentially telling her and Cassie. Combs telling her and Cassie that they need to go and convince Cudi not to go to the police about the break-in of his home. There's a lot of predicate acts that she testified to that are textbook to support racketeering, but we don't have conspiracy. We don't have a meeting of the mind between the mob boss and some of these other sub-bosses to carry out the purpose of this enterprise. We have a lot of means and methods of the enterprise, but not this agreement that we need for the conspiracy of racketeering.
So is this an unspoken agreement by the people who work for Diddy, like his security guards who go with him with the guns to these things, like when they go to Suge Knight and when they go to Cudi's house? They're going with him willingly, knowing without him having to, or we don't know what he actually said to them or what the agreement might have been. But these people are his like thugs that go with him and to try and carry out these crimes. Is that something that
I think that's
understood?
That's going to be the argument of the government, but I just don't think it's enough proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Okay, so let's piece by piece talk about what Capricorn Clark talked about. First of all, when she was first hired, they had a walk in Central Park, and
she was threatened, I believe, right? That's what she testified.
It was a tumultuous decade, I guess, that she worked for him for. But she was threatened at that point. Talk about the point when she was in charge of bringing the jewelry on a trip with them, and she ended up being in an abandoned warehouse for 5 days.
I believe that's when the jewelry had gone missing, and she was subjected to days and days of polygraph testing. At some point, the polygraph examiner had said to her, "I'm not getting conclusive results here, and if I don't get conclusive results, you might end up in the East River." I mean, but what is the relationship between the polygraph examiner and Sean Combs? Is he also a sub-boss and a Confederate? I'm not sure.
They're all working for him, maybe.
Well, I don't know that the polygraph examiner is working for him.
He was said to have done a lot of polygraph tests with people in his
different
orbit.
people have been taking polygraphs.
Employed.
Right. And I think the defense is going to argue that this was maybe a hostile work environment, that Diddy was very sort of strict about, he don't like people stealing. I think we had testimony about that. He wanted to be able to trust the people that work for him, but that it's not racketeering.
So some questions that I have in my mind are, the different witnesses kind of pieced together one whole story for the jury. We started off with Cassie talking about Cudi's car possibly blowing up, and really that was about it, using a burner phone. Then we have Cudi come and talks about his car being blown up and this break-in at his house. And now we have Capricorn Clark filling in those blanks. Well, I was kidnapped from my home in the early morning hours with Sean Combs at gunpoint. We went to Cudi's house with a gun. He was waving it around, threatening me and saying that he was going to kill Kid Cudi at his house. He calls up Kid Cudi. He comes home, sees them at his house, and leaves. So we're kind of getting a bigger, more full picture of what happened that day in 2012 at his home.
Yeah, but she also testified to facts that involved Cudi that Cudi didn't testify to, which is fodder to the defense, like being chased, Now, I know that, for the prosecution, they're going to say, well, Cudi wasn't aware that he was being chased. But still, she's coming in with this elaborate story years later, and this is fodder for the defense. And how is there a chase if Cudi, the target, who was about to get killed, by Combs with a gun, was not aware that he was being chased?
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is that she says he lost them pretty quick, and it ended in 60 seconds. He knew those roads really in and out, and he was gone before he even saw them in the rearview mirror chasing him. Some of the other things that were interesting that the defense was trying to poke at was her love, admiration for Sean Combs. The email she wrote to him about
she had a crush on him.
Crush on him at one point. She continued to try and claw back her job. but she says it was because she had her son with special needs to take care of, and this was her only means of working, and he held the key to her kingdom.
I understand that, but when you have a child with needs and you're a single mother and you need to work and your life is in danger because you've been kidnapped at gunpoint, you don't put yourself back in that job. That's just not logical. And I think the defense is going to be able to successfully argue that that makes no sense, that if she was truly threatened and was in fear of this person, that she wouldn't, as recently as April of 2024, amid all of this investigation, she still wanted her job back. I also think, Anthony, she was really good for the defense in terms of her testimony about Cassie's agency and autonomy, that, that Combs did not direct her to dye her hair, that Combs gave her a lot of resources.
He approved it, though.
He approved it, correct. And that Combs gave her a lot of resources as talent for Bad Boys, and even after the focus shifted away from her as talent, that he was still supportive of her and giving her a lot of resources. And then when the defense asked her, what did you think of her talent? It was kind of like, man, like she wasn't really.
She never really was a fan of Cassie.
Correct. Yeah.
And she was only working for Cassie because it meant she could get back in with Bad Boy.
Correct.
She said she was talented, not very talented.
Right.
And her work ethic wasn't that great.
And I think that's important for the defense, because the defense is going to say, Diddy is not the reason why her career was dead. It wasn't that he was controlling her and her career. It wasn't that she was coerced. It was because she's not that great.
And then you touched on this to wrap up. In April of 2024, a month after he was arrested, she met with Combs' defense team, right? Mm-hmm. And during that meeting, either her or her lawyer kind of suggested maybe she get back in as chief of staff for Diddy as he was dealing with this whole PR crisis. And yet again, you want to get back with this guy who has really made a lot of people's lives miserable, allegedly.
And I also think her testimony made very clear that she's disappointed that she was an assistant. She was not chief of staff. She considered herself a protector of Combs, someone that would have never let this happen to Combs had she been in charge. And I get the sense that, and I think the defense is going to argue, that she is a disgruntled, resentful former employee who also testified to being essentially, she testified to a little bit of forced labor. She said she was making $65,000 a year, working 9 to 4 with no breaks. Again, being in that job is very prestigious to a lot of these people who took that job. They wanted to be around Diddy. They wanted to be around all of his businesses. And to this witness today, Capricorn Clark, she took that job very seriously. She wanted to do more. She felt like she was the loyal protector, and she never got there. It's almost like Cassie, who wanted to be number one, but she never got there.
I don't know how you feel. I probably can guess how you feel. But I feel like that Capricorn really was the strongest for the prosecution so far,
Correct.
Minus Cassie's freak-off testimony.
Yeah. And she was the strongest in terms of predicate acts and the means and methods of carrying out the enterprise that goes to the racketeering charge. But again, what we're really missing here is anywhere near proof beyond a reasonable doubt that there was an enterprise for the purpose of the gratification of its leader, being Sean Combs, and that there was a conspiracy between Combs and other members of the enterprise. That's missing for me, but we still have 2 weeks to go.
We do. We have a long way to go. The prosecution said today that they think they're going to wrap up a week early, so this case could end up being done by the end of June. So cross our fingers that it continues to go.
2 weeks of a defense case is a long time, because remember, the burden is on the prosecution entirely. So we don't, as defense lawyers, we don't have to put up any witnesses whatsoever, and certainly Combs does not have to testify. The fact that the defense has 2 weeks worth of witnesses to put on tells me that there's a whole other side to the story beyond just the defense poking holes at the prosecution's case.
All right, Sarah Azari alongside Anthony DiLorenzo outside the courthouse for day 10. We will talk to you later.